Fma.
Crunchy, creamy cookie candy cupcake. All right, everyone. Let's take it from the top. The stage is set. The night, moist with apprehension. The princess prepares to take her own life. It is far better to nourish worms than it is to live without love. She reaches for the poison chalice, while the wicked Malkovio plots his ascension to the throne. While her aged father lies gravely ill.
Yes, I am gravely ill.
Hark! Who goes there? 'Tis I, the hero, here to rescue his emotionally unstable maiden. Stand back, you jailers of virtue, or taste the bitter sting of my vengeance. The sting of my... Dr. Marks, I'm not getting anything from you. People, we talked about this. Acting is reacting. Victor, you were wooden. There, I said it. Mr. Timms, you were good. Perhaps a little too good. What's that, Victor? My character's undefined? That's absurd. I'm the guy, the hero, the protagonist. Every story needs a hero. Who else is better suited to bask in the glorious adulation of his numerous companions? Who am I? I could be anyone. Why, I could be a mighty sea captain returning from a mighty voyage to reclaim his mechanical arm. Or I could be the rogue anthropologist battling pythons down in the Congo. Down, Chonga, down. And if you desire romance, I will become the greatest lover the world has ever known.
Fantastic.
Hola. I couldn't help but notice you noticing me noticing you. You know, the women find me uncomfortably good looking. Oh, stop it. No, really. Well, if you must. Oh, that tickles. What are you doing? Are those real? Whoosh. That's it. Conflict. Victor, you were right. I have been undefined. People, I've had an epiphany. A hero cannot exist in a vacuum. What our hero needs is a dramatic train of events that propels the hero into conflict.
No. I am the father.
And here we go.
That belongs in a museum.
Are you telling me that you built a time machine? Out of a DeLorean?
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
This is Sparta!
Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
Dr. Grant, my dear Dr. Sattler, welcome to Jurassic Park.
I know, we put on the performance of a lifetime. Welcome back to Easily Entertained. Back with me, Bryson, and Cormick.
The crowd goes wild.
Yeah! Just sound like oscillating on the fan.
We're hilarious.
Yeah. If you didn't know what that scene was, you're missing out because it's one of the best movies that we really love. And we're going to talk about it today. That is Rango. The animated Western from 2011. If you haven't heard of Rango, it stars Johnny Depp as a chameleon that gets stranded out in the desert, and
Mojave Desert.
Decides to put on an act and become a lawman.
The Sheriff Rango.
Classic gunslinger Western.
With a little bit.
Anthropomorphic animals.
Yeah.
Kind of with some meta commentary on the genre as well. So we are super excited to talk about it today.
Absolutely. It's one of my favorites from childhood for sure.
I remember, I think the first time I watched it was with one of my cousins. I think it was either in 2011 or 2012. It was when it had first released onto DVD.
Yeah.
And this is before like Netflix was hugely popular. I think it was around, but it was more the DVD renting service than streaming at the time. And we rented from Redbox because me and my cousin Ben, we were having a sleepover at our place. It was great. And on the way back to our home, we were going to find a movie, and I think I had wanted to really see Rango. I thought the trailer looked sick. And so we picked it up at Redbox. I remember texting our Aunt Melissa and we're like, can Ben also watch this?
Right,
Because
yeah.
because we had heard things that it was a bit more adult.
Says hell.
Yeah, it's a bit darker for
Sure.
for an animated.
Right, something
movie.
that's like a DreamWorks animated. You're like, oh, this is a little more.
Yeah, you're like,
But it's-
this isn't the typical
it's still-
Nickelodeon SpongeBob type
Yeah.
style.
Yeah,
You're
still a kid show.
Exactly. And so that's how I got to watch it for the first time. And from the first time, I've loved it.
Yeah.
My mom did not care for it.
Really?
Growing up, I think because of the more adult aspects
Sure.
of the film, that's why she didn't really like it. And then, I
Right.
don't know. You're missing out, Mom. It's a well-made movie.
Dude, it is so good. It was one. I think the first time I saw it, my mom had bought it, just like bargain bin style or something like
Mhm.
that, in Walmart DVD style, and it became one that, you know, if you ever did this, your seats in the back of the car, you had like the screen on it. And
Oh, yes.
yeah.
We didn't have those
that-
very often, but we did have one for like road trips.
Yeah,
We could
exactly, for road
attach it to
trips.
the
attach it to the car. Exactly. That Rango became a classic for the road trip. In my family, me and my brothers love Rango. We'll watch that anytime, any day. We love it so much.
We had one like that, particularly when me and my brother, or just any of our siblings, we would usually go with our grandparents and we would go to Idaho to get potatoes. Because
Right.
our family owned, I don't know if they owned or knew people that owned, like a warehouse full of potatoes and we could just go get them.
Nice.
It was awesome.
Free taters, baby.
And so usually our grandparents were the ones that went and they would get a bunch of sacks of potatoes and bring them back for all the family that's close by. And we would watch Open Season.
Dude.
That was our go-to. We brought
Nice.
that with the little like DVD player.
Yeah, the little zipper bag, too.
Exactly. And watched that the entire time. It
Open
was
Season's
awesome.
a classic. If we had it on DVD, I'm sure that would have been one my brothers and I watched a lot, too.
Yeah, we loved that one. We'll have to do an episode on that one too.
Dude, yeah,
'Cause
that and like Over the Hedge. Oh,
Yes,
dude, cabin movies.
I love those kind of movies. The ones
Yes.
where like specifically for like camping, cabins, like where you're out kind of in the middle of nowhere and you're not like surrounded by these bajillion options from streaming.
Right,
You
yeah.
actually have like these set movies.
You've
that
got
you
to
have
pick a
watch.
DVD. Okay?
It's wonderful.
We love DVDs around here.
We do.
We do.
Trust me, we do. For all of June and July,
Oh, yeah.
it was DVD Central.
Absolutely.
It was great.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, it wasn't awful. It was a good thing we had DVDs.
That's for
or
sure.
we would have gone
Nutty.
insane.
More so than we are now.
Yeah. Anyways, back to Rango. So this movie, like I said, it's a Western. And I'm not a huge fan of Westerns.
Same.
Quite honestly. I find them usually, one, they're kind of full of a lot of tropes.
Oh, yeah,
Where,
certainly.
like, it's the typical, like, hero's journey trope, which is fine. That's how a lot of movies are based. They're just not always Western setting.
Yeah.
But I don't particularly care for it regardless of the setting, like, unless it's written really well. Like in this movie, it has a hero's journey, but it's a different kind of hero's journey. We'll kind of get that more
into it.
later. And they have that. The setting I didn't always care for. Maybe that's because I grew up in Utah, so the kind of desert dry feel felt too similar to me. And I was like, I don't really
Been
want-
there, done that.
don't
but-
really care about this.
Sure.
But as I've kind of grown up, I like the setting more, just less in a Western context.
Sure.
Like having modern type stories in that kind of desert area, that I like. But
Yeah.
it's the Western kind of feel that I don't care for. And then, I don't know, maybe it's the Southern draw. I'm not always about it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, but I like that this movie, although it's a Western, it kind of challenges a lot of those Western tropes. In fact, calling them out half the time.
Yeah.
Even just hearing that little opening sequence that we did, that is directly from the movie. And they are calling out a lot of tropes from modern, well,
Just from film.
from storytelling out of
Yeah, true.
everything. Because they're basically doing a kind of Shakespearean kind of play, and then they talk about more adventure, and then we get thrown into a Western conflict
Right.
where this character has to kind of put on the
The show, put
the
on a
gruff
show.
lawman who's
Yeah.
catches bounty hunters, that kind of...
He's thrust into a role. He's an actor.
Exactly. And that's what I kind of like, because at first, he's in like a floral shirt, looking like he's fresh from vacation, which he's a chameleon, so that kind of fits his character.
Oh, for sure.
And he's very out of place in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that, because typically in a Western, everything feels in place.
Yeah.
You're like, yep, this
We've all
feels
been
like
here
Western.
a long time.
Yeah. We've been doing this for 20 some odd years. I've been running my ranch. And I'm like, that feels like country folk.
Yeah.
I'm like, growing up in the area that we did.
Yeah.
We're like, yeah, we know what farm people are like.
Yep. It's that's something that I really do love about it as well, where Rango is out of place, and so that's again, it's they're doing a whole meta, calling it out the whole time, but not in an in your face way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's kind of awesome. Because he gets thrust into conflict because he is super out of place.
Mm-hmm.
And it's beautiful to watch their show don't tell strategy in this, especially when it comes to Rango, because his physical appearance will change until at the end of the movie he looks in place.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously that happens with a lot of things, and costuming, even in like live theater and stuff, they'll do that. But I really, really love how they do it with Rango, because there are, especially toward the beginning, where the town's like, oh yeah, well, why don't you be our sheriff and what have you, and they kind of just jump onto him and have him do that immediately. He gets in this kind of ridiculous, like, black and red, almost more Spanish cowboy.
It makes you think of Marty McFly in Back to the Future 3.
Exactly.
When it's their interpretation of what these people should look like versus the real thing.
Right.
And so it's like in Back to the Future 3 when he goes back and he's wearing
The
pink cowboy getup, and everyone's like,
pink
what the
cowboy.
heck are you wearing, boy?
Yeah.
And then that's kind of how Rango is like. He's very much out of place. He's looking for more of the putting on a performance rather than actually getting into the role and becoming the sheriff itself.
Right.
And I like that kind of that version of the hero's journey, where he learns to accept that role.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's fantastic in this film.
Right.
And
it's cool. It's cool with the Western story, as we talked about. It is placed in the Western thing, but as we talk about Rango's story, it's very much not Western.
Yeah.
Where he's just that's a really beautiful thing about the way that they wrote Rango's characters, because it could have been anything. He's just a family pet. Really, at the start of the movie, he's a family pet. So really, he could have been anything. It's almost like a flushed away situation, where even he was just a family pet. But
That's
I love
a good movie too.
Oh,
I
yeah,
haven't
true.
seen that forever.
Flushed away is great. But I love when the fact that they take the angle of having him wanting to be like an actor and like wanting that, putting on that performance, because whether you want to, choose acting as a career or not, or if you're interested in acting at all, right? Yeah. That's something anybody can relate to. Everybody's had to put on a performance of some kind at some point in their life, whether they wanted to or not. And it makes it really easy to relate to Rango. And as he's kind of thrust into a Western, it's kind of like, oh, well, I don't know. And then just neither does he. That's the beauty of it.
And as soon as he kind of starts gaining attachment to this world, the mayor is like, this thing is all going to go away. We're going to follow the march of progress. Because like we said, this world kind of is a Western, but it starts in the real world. It's people driving cars. He's a house pet. They see Vegas being built and why all the water is gone from their little town. And so they kind of realize that, it's no longer really a Western area anymore. And so Rango becomes more protective of his role now, because now, although was kind of thrust into it, he's gained attachment for it and the people that are around him.
They also attach to him.
Exactly. And to have all of those things ripped away, that's what we're now fighting for. We want to solve the problem of the modern progression and keep the tradition while also bringing something new to that area. And that, I think, is fantastic. And it kind of brings up this sort of asymmetry that's throughout the movie, regardless of the story, of the character design, the way the characters act. The movie, I watched a review one time on this. Can't remember the guy's name, but he called Rango the anti-animation animation. This film is meant to look so imperfect. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Because, so I've kind of talked about things similar in like Across the Spider-Verse or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They're kind of designed to look a little off. And this one, it's a very similar aspect, but it's very hyper-realistic.
Right.
And much like realism, nothing is perfect. And with the Western vibe, they try to put it to an even greater extent, making everything look very gross,
just
grimy,
thrust
dirty.
together.
And I like
Whatever
that.
you could use.
Exactly. And I like that asymmetry side to things. I think that gives a more realistic approach to it. And then with the story, that helps you gravitate towards the characters a lot more, because now they are real. Your life isn't perfect symmetry. It's not, everything's not going to go your way. Everything's not going to go these characters' way. And so that makes you grab onto these emotions a lot stronger. These people feel like they're going to lose their town. They're going to lose their livelihoods. That's something almost everyone, especially in the modern age, can relate to. As things start to progress, feeling the march of progression, AI, you start to feel that loss of control and the loss of your stability.
A little bit of a looming,
Exactly. And that kind of asymmetry to the story lets you be a part of it yourself. Even if the setting is meant to be a much older setting, we can still relate to it. And I think that gives it that imperfect kind of feel, challenges traditional ideas, but still kind of keeping some of the core values in it as well.
Yeah. Something I really love with regards to like the asymmetry is there are a few moments through where they're doing this really rapid conversation, and somebody says this, and then there's kind of two different lines, maybe multiple different lines that are going on at the same time, and everybody's hearing this and everybody's hearing that. And like it comes for some goofy jokes, like where they're like the crow, the wounded bird. He's their guide right there, their tracker. It says something about the people that they're tracking, and he says there's these two, they're riding side saddle, and one of them has an enlarged prostate.
And you're like, sorry?
Yeah, right. And they just drop that in there, and then all the other characters immediately jump onto that. And someone says this, and someone says that, and then someone's got a bad valve, and then it's like everybody, and then whoosh, someone needs a checkup. And it's like, huh? What just happened? Because that is, I mean, again, everybody has been in a situation where that happened.
Exactly, where everyone's talking over each other. You can't really understand what's going on or the context of everything. And so it kind of keeps building and building and building upon itself. And that makes it real, because that's the kind of stuff that happens in real life. Once again, I had another thought.
It feeds into those characters' stories. Because especially as they're out on this hunt, they're looking for their livelihood, and so they're all a little shaken, and a little lost and confused, like they are in conversation.
Yeah, and I like that with all the character designs as well, like them all being so misshapen. Some of them having missing limbs, arrows through their eyes. Even Rango, our main protagonist.
Oh, he is
jank. He is not what you would think of when it comes to a hero. Especially in a Western.
Oh, double, yeah.
In a typical Western, you're thinking of this like pretty beefed up guy. He's ready to go fight some people. Rango, he's got a pot belly. His head is very crooked. It's like misshapen.
Neck is a zigzag.
Yeah,
bro.
his neck is a zigzag and super skinny. One of his eyes is off. Like, it's bigger than the other one.
Yeah.
He looks imperfect, and that encapsulates, thank you, the whole story. And that makes it feel more genuine and actually gets you to connect with Rango as a character. And when he gets found out about all of his deceptions, it makes you feel even more for him, because you've been caught in a lie before. everyone's done it. And so you feel that kind of, oh no, now he has to deal with the repercussions of his actions.
That's something that's so fantastic, especially about animation, is the way that they can do that subtle, subliminal messaging to your mind. Like, not in a scary way. Of course, they're not like flashing, like, I don't know, Illuminati messages between, frames. It's not that kind of thing. It's
Sleep.
it's
Sleep.
right.
Sleep. Nightmare, nightmare, nightmare.
It's those little things that your brain will pick up on because you don't, whether you notice it or not, it's an endless stream of stimulus coming through your eyeballs, and that's what's beautiful about a visual medium, and the difference between like a visual and an audio medium, I feel like, is kind of that where the visual is really it can affect you on a subtle level where you can just barely catch on this little thing and you're not doing it on purpose. Audio makes you do it on purpose. It makes you imagine what's happening. And then when they come together, that's just something beautiful.
I think, especially when we were watching it last night, you were noticing a lot of the diegetic sound.
Oh, yeah.
Where, if you don't know, that sound that's actually part of their physical world.
Right, yeah. So the
And not
characters
just-
themselves can hear it, not just the audience.
Exactly. So, like, music is a non-diegetic sound.
Typically.
Usually. In this film, they have a mariachi band
That does it all.
That'll randomly start playing.
It's so
like
good.
when they are going to try and find the water and they pick up something on the trail and they'll be like, now we ride. And then you hear whoosh, and there's nothing. That means we're riding now. This moment.
As
And
they,
then they start playing
pan
some
over.
epic music to start riding off into the distance for.
Yeah.
And that would be diegetic sound.
Right, because the characters are hearing it.
Exactly.
And I love that joke. Again, it's some of that meta commentary and meta comedy, but it's so funny to me every time it happens. And when I was a kid, of course, I didn't understand it as much. I just figured that, like, hey, they're talking to each other, and that doesn't always happen, I guess. But now, as I've studied a little bit more about audio and film and the diegetic sound, I was like, dang, that's actually hilarious. Like, I really love the idea that they're like, we can't do anything without our music, Like, if they're not playing, we're not moving,
That really relates to a modern audience because we can't go a single second without
some sort of stimulus.
With some stimulus. I can't be left alone with my thoughts. What will happen?
Yeah.
And so having that in this film where they have to add that, or the mariachi band kind of following Rango because they just think
and
he's
like
going to
narrating
die.
his story, yeah.
And so they're like, let's watch this happen because this is going to be hilarious. This chameleon in the desert is just going to obliterate himself.
Right. Which is, again, speaking to the writing, where the mariachi band isn't there for the sake of being there. They're like, yeah, let's watch this chameleon get shredded by the desert. Like, this is going to be hilarious.
Exactly. It takes its own spin on the Western genre.
Oh, yeah.
And with our main character, that's the whole point.
The whole point.
Is choosing your own story. From the beginning, like we did in our little opening sequence, Rango asks himself who he is.
Yeah, who am I? Like me shopping at Walmart.
Because he doesn't know. And finally, when he's thrust into this world, he knows who he is, sort of, now.
He's assigned who he is. He's called as a cast.
Exactly. He's now like, well, I can be this person.
So he'll jump onto it.
And then when he's called out, that's when things kind of go wrong. Because once he kind of claims the sheriff persona, he's just winging it. He's improvising the entire time, which,
so funny.
Little sidetrack. I love how they made this movie.
Yeah.
Because typical animated movies, they kind of just do the voices and then they will animate over it. This movie, because Johnny Depp plays the main character, Johnny Depp is very much a method actor. And not in the...
Not a crazy way.
Yeah, not in the douchebag way. He actually just gets really into his characters and wants to fully act. And with this movie, because it was animated...
Right, voice acting.
He didn't just want to do the voices. So almost everything was recreated as an actual, like, scene. And it helped for, like, reference images because they could record them actually acting, and they could get all the little quirks and little movements that Johnny Depp brings to the character or any of the other actors bring to the characters. And so that made it feel all the more real as well. And so It's like an actor playing an actor.
Yeah.
And I think Johnny Depp being this character and kind of having to just improv the entire time tells a lot about the character and the actor playing it.
Yeah.
Because they are choosing their own stories and they're working on it as they're going along. They have no idea where they're going yet. They have to kind of figure that out along the way. And with that comes some mishaps. Rango keeps having to kind of lie and be like, oh yeah, I've done this. I killed all those Jenkins brothers with one bullet. And that becomes
7 of them.
And that becomes a thing throughout the film.
Yeah.
And
recurring joke moments.
And he kind of has to play like he's actually knowing what he's doing.
Yeah.
And then by the end, when our not exactly main villain, but our kind of side main villain, Rattlesnake Jake, comes up, he calls him out on his BS.
In front of everyone. He's the crux of that.
He was like, you didn't do any of these things. Say
you ain't even from the West.
You ain't even from the West. Tell everybody. Because we all know you're lying. And that causes Rango to rethink who he is.
He gets really small in that moment, which is like, because just before that moment, he's as big as he's been the whole film and then just crushed.
Mm-hmm. And it shows that in the filmmaking as well. As he's leaving the town, you get a lot of wide shots.
Lots of them.
It is him and the surrounding environment. It's not close up on him like a hero is.
No.
It's showing that this character's at his lowest.
He's isolated.
And they have basically a metaphor for suicide.
Yeah.
Is him. He goes to the highway where he ended up at the beginning of the movie, where he was thrown out of the car and thrust into this world. He is rethinking his entire motives.
Right, and he once again asks, "Who am I?"
Mm-hmm.
And then he answers himself for, I think, for the first time. Like seriously, he answers himself, "I'm nobody."
And then walks into the highway.
Right.
And it's this clarity that kind of comes to him, because after he walks across the highway, he makes it. He doesn't get hit. There's cars going. They think, basically, you think he's gonna get roadkill.
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen. He makes it to the end.
To the other side, if you will.
To the other side. And he's carried away. And he meets the Spirit of the West.
Spirit of the West.
This is the embodiment of the Western movie.
Yep.
The character, like the design, is meant to be Clint Eastwood.
Exactly.
And so...
And he's riding in his alabaster carriage, a golf cart.
Yeah.
Guarded by golden guardians, a bunch of Oscars.
Exactly.
It's so funny.
It's
so
hilarious.
funny.
We love the meta commentary when it's done well.
Even in the most serious moment of the film, you're like, that's funny.
You're like,
I'm so glad that this is how it is.
That is pretty comical. We like that one.
Right, yeah. He's just out there on the dried up lake bed collecting old fish hooks.
Exactly. And this is where Rango realizes that the story is not about him. It's about everything. It's about everyone. And that makes him actually be like, okay,
I got to care about these people.
I care about these people. It's now not just a role to me. It's my job.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when things take a turn. When he actually understands his story and how it affects other people. And then he gets back to town. He creates an elaborate plan to stop the bad guys. And that is the best part of the film, is where he recognizes his story and how he's supposed to react.
Right.
And that...
he recognizes his part in the story.
Exactly.
He's become accepted. And not only does he accept himself, but I mean, he's lived in a box his whole life. There's a little moment in the movie where they talk about that, where it's like, oh, I couldn't imagine being locked up in a box my whole life.
He's
what
like, yeah.
It's like, yeah, definitely couldn't imagine that. So it's yes, he's come out of himself, because all he's ever had is himself until now, and then he realizes, well, okay, then then I'm a part of this.
Yeah,
I'm no longer just me.
Yeah, I think it really tells it's like an actor's story, is them actually figuring out who they are in
that
the
show.
story, in the show, in the movie, in the film, whatever it is. The movie or the film. I love redundancy.
What have you? Okay.
But he learns who he is, and that's how it is to be an actor. And I like that this story tells that. It gives us a glimpse into this Western world that lets all these characters have their own stories. It builds the lore on all these people a lot. It lets them express different kinds of different parts of themselves, being able to show off their good and their bad, the asymmetry of everything, while also giving commentary on a old genre. And I love that. And so that kind of brings us to the end of Rango.
No.
But before we leave, you know what time it is. Question of the week. This question of the week was kind of brought on by Cormick. So,
Yeah.
Cormick, do you want to ask it since you came up with it?
Yeah. Oftentimes when I watch any movie, this is kind of a question that I've always got on my mind. Like, and sometimes I rearrange the question a little bit. Like, oh, who would somebody else think I am in this movie? You know, like, if somebody were to cast me in this film, where would they cast me?
Mhm.
You know, just like who do I relate to most is basically the question. But you know, just a little more specific than that. So in this one, which character would you most want to be in? So not necessarily which one do you think you are the most like. I mean, if that's the case, then fine. But which one do you want to be? Know what I mean?
Let's see. Which one would I want to be? To be honest, because I don't feel like I'm like this person, but I would 100% want to be Rattlesnake Jake. Because
Dude,
he is freaking sick.
He's bad A.
He got
for sure.
his rattle is a machine gun.
Gatling gun tail.
That's the
come
coolest
on.
character design I've ever seen. I love that, and although I don't always love the Southern draw, I love the way Rattlesnake
Dude,
Jake talks.
His voice acting is
It's
impeccable.
impeccable.
For the show. I mean,
If
honestly,
you-
the whole show, really.
If you haven't seen Rango, which by the way, anytime you're listening to one of these episodes, I'm amazed if you haven't already seen it.
True.
But
True.
makes sense. We're kind of reviewing things, and we don't always go super in detail about the details of the story, so you aren't usually spoiled.
Too much.
But if you haven't watched it, be sure to watch it because it's fantastic.
It's so good.
Yeah, I think Rattlesnake Jake would be sick
Yeah.
to play.
My older brother's name is Jake, so we always kind of pictured him that way too.
That is hilarious. Cormick, who would you want to be?
You know, it's a good question. Like I say, I ask this about myself in literally any show I watch, whether it's live theater, TV, movies.
Mhm.
I'm always like, yeah, that's me.
Yeah, that's me.
This
I love those
is me.
TikToks.
I've always loved Spoons. He's always been one of my favorite characters in Rango. He's got those moments where he's trying to be all tough, but he's a small mouse, and of course that's all symbolic of his choice of character and what have you.
Mhm.
But then as soon as somebody's like, come on, Spoons, like really? Especially there's a really big moment for Spoons toward the end where Rango's like out there trying to tell people that you gotta have hope and stuff, and then he says, well, he's like, let's cut off their giblets, but Rango's like, really, Spoons, is that who you are? And then he's like, well, no, but they've taken all our hope.
Mhm.
And so I really do love that. And then also he's just a goofy little dude with his little spoons.
I found a human spinal column in my fecal matter once.
Exactly. It's
You might want to get that looked at.
Yeah, either Spoons or Waffles. I love Waffles, and I didn't know his name until before recording this episode, and we were looking up the characters. He's the horned toad, or not toad, horned lizard.
Horny toads is also what they're called.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Embarrassing for me.
We have them out in like Enoch.
Oh,
a lot
cool.
of them. Apparently one of my coworkers used to just catch them all the time in his backyard. But
Nice.
yeah, they're lizards, but they can also be called horny toads if you've ever heard of those.
Yeah, he's a funny little dude, and he's got like some pretty ambiguous trauma that he
Mhm.
kind of mentions one bit here and there. But I love his voice. Really, is what I really love. And
It's a Cormick voice for
yeah,
sure.
dude, it really is. When he's like talking to Bad Bill about the new guy in town, he's like, "Hey, Bad Bill, he ain't afraid of-
tell you.
He ain't afraid of none of you." And then he's like, "Well, he might not be, but maybe I am.
Yeah.
Back away from Bad Bill. He's bad, you know." I love those smaller, goofy characters for sure.
Mm-hmm. I think that's your personality, 100%. But yeah, that was our question of the week.
Dude, answer. And then if there's like TV series, shows, games that you want us to review,
please suggest it.
Yeah.
Because
you're the audience. We'll do it for
we
you.
like it. You, the audience.
Cedar City reference. Go to Off the Cuff.
Yes.
It's also like improv comedy and reference. what
Yeah,
have
true.
you.
But yeah, that was Rango. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this
I hope
episode
you're
of
inspired
Easily
to see it if you haven't.
Heck yeah.
Come on.
Be sure to always tune back in and listen. Give us a follow and review us if
you so desire.
if you like it. Give us a 5 stars, please. It lets people know that you like the podcast and it gets more people to listen.
Or tell us we suck and we'll fix it. I don't know.
Yeah, true. We'll try and do whatever we can if I decide to. But anyways, that is it for this episode. So thank you for listening. And this has been Easily Entertained.
You have been entertained.